Reddit talks, Reddit talks, Reddit talks, Reddit talks, Reddit talks. If it's possible to discuss this without big fight, what will we do with stuff like murderers, rapists, and pedophiles if we defund police? The jailing system for criminals would still be the same, but police could also be held as criminals, rather than them getting off scot-free, like they have been when they commit a crime. I don't think the defund the police statement is about reducing their budgets to zero. Just reduce them, so that they can't buy military-grade weapons/equipment. If this is what they mean, then they should say cut police budgets or reallocate some police money to mental health, or whatever. Saying defund the police makes it sound like they want no cops at all. And as bad as some cops have acted, that's simply not a workable option. Maybe you're just taking the defund the police definition incorrectly. No one said disband the police. What these protests have been saying is we need better police, not no police. Police brutality has to end, but lessening their powers doesn't mean getting rid of the police altogether. Wait, so defund the police doesn't actually mean defund the police. It means slowly shifting that funding to more community-based initiatives. For instance, having psychological professionals arriving on scene for somebody having an episode, rather than the police arresting them for disturbing the peace and them not getting the help they need. I don't think we should defund police. We need to support departments more, to allow them to set up outreach events, to increase the number of minority officers. We need to fund them, so they don't have to require for-profit police policy to get by. Perhaps a better way would also be shifting funds around as well, but I don't think departments need to get smaller. Defunding the police means taking away their military equipment and making them patrol cops again, using the money saved to fund community development programs. It's simple. You remove laws that don't make sense, and you invest in quality of life. Look at who's in jail. Druggies that could use some compassion. Low-income convicts that could use some psychotherapy and counseling. If you decriminalize drugs and make it easy for people to be social and feel safe in their own homes and that they have a future, you'd only have to worry about minor spur of the moment crimes. Then if you invest in education, you might know what to do about those. Question was, what do you do with the murderers and rapists, not drug users? It's not defunding the police what people want. People wants the police to be held accountable for their action. Every country has a system that allows police to break some of the civilian laws in order to do their job, like carrying a weapon or questioning someone if they look suspicious. But there's a limit to it, and there has to be consequences if that limit were broken. Especially when the police makes a mistake, deliberately. But from what I've heard, me not American, and seen in some documentaries and news articles, US police are extremely hard to be held accountable for their misdeeds. Yeah, they seem to be allowed to do whatever they want. And if they do get punished, it's like 2 weeks paid suspension. Which basically sounds like paid vacation. So they are not only getting no punishment, they are getting rewarded. Recently I've seen a few videos, more like I had to, because my entire YouTube recommendation is flooded. I'd highly recommend following Patriot Act by Hasan Minhaj. It's saturated with comedy, but the information he delivers seems accurate, at least more accurate compared to what regular news media shows/writes. Is the spoiler that people are still gonna fight? I don't know how that got there. I'm not good at the Reddit, as my mother would say. Let me see if I can get rid of it. Lol. You. Yeah, I have no idea. To answer the post, honestly not much will change in the way we process and handle criminals. The difference I'm looking for is better training for police and more regulations on officers to help prevent excessive force and unjustified situations. This sounds achievable and wise. I know people on both sides of this issue. Some seem to be saying away with police altogether, and some seem completely content with the current situation. While I believe being okay with what's going on to be the far worse moral position, I fear overcorrection. Normally I'd think I was talking crazy, but 2020 has been a doozy, so who knows? I'm sure I'm being dramatic. Lynch mobs and vigilante justice, I guess. You do know what defund means, right? The police won't disappear, they'll just get smaller. It doesn't take 6 cops to take one guy, they'll make it just 1 or 2 to a suspect like the rest of the world. The NYPD is literally a standing army. It's unnecessarily big and should be cut anyway. I've heard the phrase abolish the police used in place of defund. Then that's a different thing then, isn't it? Same thing we do now. Mostly nothing. Rather than spending hundreds of millions chasing and punishing people for minor drug offenses and other non-violent crimes, you spend way less money and just focus on the criminals that are actually a threat to society. You would investigate and arrest them. Why don't we just defund their expensive military equipment and weaponry, legalize and regulate all drugs, and shift police and other law enforcement and related resources from the black hole of drug enforcement and incarceration to actual offenses against people and property? We might even have enough resources left to actually treat the festering social ills that manifest in crime. Plus, think of all the jail and court and prison space that would open up if existing while black and other systemic police targeting and harassment of black people was discontinued. Funny, it looks like almost everybody here thinks that defund the police does not actually mean defund the police. Defund the police doesn't mean no law enforcement of any kind. There are a lot of different ideas about how to better enforce laws. A popular one, though one I think is a monumentally bad idea, is community policing, similar to neighborhood watch systems. Others would dismantle the current policing system and rebuild it entirely in a way that creates a formal law enforcement system that is very different from the one that exists. Some do want an essentially police-free state. On small scales this does work. In places it's been tried, crime fell, but I guess it doesn't address what happens when serious crimes like murder or child molestation occur. Still more would keep the current system, but would severely cut the budgets for police departments, rerouting the funds to other areas that would prevent or mitigate crime in the first place. Defunding is about making the police what they were meant to be, to serve and protect. This cowboy attitude a lot of police forces are getting these days is encouraged and supported by giving police more tactical gear and training. It used to be groups like SWAT were the only teams that had this type of gear and were called in during severe cases. But it wasn't a general thing that all police had riot gear and the types of weaponry we are seeing rolled out at these protests. A police force's first response shouldn't be to gear up and grab weapons. It should be to de-escalate and protect people's rights. Defunding is not the end all be all and is only the first step in a reduction of police brutality. Take away the money and there won't be access to all of this tear gas, all of these rubber bullets, and instead of playing soldier, police will actually have to work with their communities instead of instilling fear in them. The limousine liberals calling for no police will still have their private security. The fate of ordinary law-abiding people is of no concern to them and their virtue signaling. Well, some will keep on murdering, just like they were before, I guess. Police ain't going away. If they did, the world would be scary. They just have to change. As for the offenders, they eventually would receive the same law penalty with a case built. I'd like for the whole system to change dramatically, and I support the ideas I see on posts about the defunding. It's just the paranoid little soul inside of me who also wants to see some ideas about how to fill in the gaps when it comes to the big crimes. Maybe there have been talks or articles and whatnot about that. I just can't find them. If anyone has any links, I'd love to read them. There would be private security forces replacing them. That's so much worse, lol. Yeah, I tend to agree. Though, it could theoretically be possible to hold them to much higher standards than the regular PDs, especially since you can just replace them if they start doing questionable shit. I don't think we could necessarily hold them accountable though, and a private security force might not be possible for everyone. I do agree with your point about replacing them. I just think it's better to simply apply that to cops instead though. Things need to be stricter for cops. Body cams for one. Charges for police who don't intervene when other officers are violating the law. Nobody has thought that far ahead, I guarantee it. The plan would be to defund certain police forces at a time. So neighboring police forces will handle the criminals, while a city fixes their police. Well, It's no big secret that police aren't really exceptionally good at dealing with those people anyways. Actually, you could argue that they are pretty bad at it. Defunding the police is the catchphrase for the idea of diverting funds that would normally go to police departments to other institutions that would more effectively work against crime. I mean, according to the FBI, in 2017, nearly 40% of murderers never had their offenses cleared. Cleared meaning they were arrested, charged, and turned over to the courts. And clearing murder offenses is one of the things that police departments are best at nationally. When it comes to issues like rape, robbery, assault, they don't perform as well. And when it comes to property crime, they perform much worse. Imagine this, instead of all law enforcement being carried out by police departments, some of which are ludicrously overfunded, more specific professionals address the sources of crimes and more effectively administer justice. Picture this scenario, you call 911 after being raped. Instead of 2 cops showing up, who will ask you detailed information regarding the rape, inspect you physically for bruises and other trauma, and ask you everything about how you know the person who raped you, or if you know them, the operator directs your call to a, now very well funded, rape crisis agency, who sends people who are prepared to deal with you in your current state. Keep you safe, keep you stable, and get you the best possible help at the time. This rape crisis agency also employs agents who are more adept and prepared to bring the rapist to justice, rather than depending on the generalist police officer to get it done. Of course, that scenario is after the crime has been committed. But with money that would normally go to police departments, we could fund agencies that address the sources of crimes. For example, men are more than 7 times more likely than women to commit murder. Men also dominate murders committed out of jealousy, loathing, or love. You know the type. Guy had a rough breakup, couldn't stand the girl leaving him for someone else, kills her in his agony, and then claims it was because he loved her too much. Imagine if a community had free or cheap access to therapy. I'd argue that everyone getting their head screwed on right would be more effective against murder rates than arresting people who have already committed murder does. You ever seen The Purge? Think that but every day.